get right there. So what the number say?
It's 1,673.
Wow. If I take Metropolitan Avenue, it's going to be a long road. So I guess maybe it's better I take Williamsburg.
That picture up there is the last photograph Jaye ever took on the day she died. And then we stayed awake all night, and it got to about 6 in the morning. We went and got breakfast at the local diner. And she said, remember how we used to go and get breakfast at the diner when we were first together, all those years ago? And we went, yeah. She said, it's just like that. And then we came back and made love. And then she said, I'm just going off to the bathroom, and I'll come back, we'll go to sleep. And we dozed off and woke up. And the minute we woke up, we knew something was really wrong. Instantly. Felt sick. Oh, God, what's happened? Then we got out of bed and walked through, and she'd collapsed in the bathroom. And we tried to give her CPR, but she just died in my arms. Breathed her last breath into my mouth. She's gone just within about 2 minutes. Very strange.
When did you start, when you speak of yourself, to say we?
Well, when Lady Jaye dropped her body 2 years ago, we'd already started training ourselves to say we, because we considered ourselves to be two halves of one being, which we call the Pandragine.
Yeah, this is something you did already in the 60s, right? This deconditioning of yourself.
Correct. That's true. Yeah, we instead of saying I, we would say E to represent ego. Even then, back in the 60s, and in '69 we joined our first art commune, art collective, which was known as the Exploding Galaxy. You slept a different place every night. All the clothes were in one box, so whoever got up first got the clothes, whoever got up last wore what was left. The walls were knocked out in the bathrooms and the toilets. That was quite common in communes too. They did that in Germany as well. But we had a game we would play too, which was you could just stop somebody at any point during the day and say, stop. How come you're doing the washing up the same way that you always did it? Does it have to be done that way? Why is your hair the same as it was yesterday? You know, do you have to walk? Could you skip? You know, why do you use a pencil? Could you use something different to make a drawing? Why use the alphabet that you've already got? Can you break the alphabet down and do it differently, which we actually did.
But isn't this like part of humans' nature to looking for routines?
The human species hopefully isn't finished. This isn't the final design. This is just almost a larval state. But certainly it's stressful. When we were in the Exploding Galaxy, we saw at least one person have a severe nervous breakdown, and he became catatonic. Well, what happened was, from living in different collectives, first there was the Exploding Galaxy, then there was the Temple of Psychic Youth, which was a worldwide collective network. And with the Temple of Psychic Youth, basically we were using the idea of shamanic and magical ritual to see if there were more effective ways to break behavior, to cut up behavior. And in certain more mystical, magical schools of thought, it tends to be said that the original divine being has to have been both male and female, has to have been hermaphroditic, because to be the ultimate being is to include everything. So for us, to start to project the image of the Pandragyne, the hermaphrodite, into the culture is to say, it's time for us to take responsibility for our return to a more divine state. So in 2003, on Valentine's Day, we used some money that we'd saved up and both got the same size breast implants with this friendly plastic surgeon that we met. So if they could build a really workable vagina and penis, we would certainly have gone for that. Mm-hmm. But we had other procedures, and we've had cheek implants done and other things. Between us about 12 or 14 procedures each.
I have the impression that today there are a lot of females. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of course, when you go to Bangkok and certain streets, it's just hundreds around, and for them it's something they do it when they are 18.
That's right. We've always said that the projects we do tend to be based on something inevitable that's already happening in the culture, observing it and then separating it out and having a look at it more carefully. When we first came to New York from California back in very early 96, in the back of the Village Voice there were all the sex ads, and they were basically biological women offering their services. And in the time since then, in the last 15 years, it's now something like 60% she-male offering their services. Now the clients are basically the same, primarily heterosexual men. So we would argue that that's a reinforcement and a vindication of our view that in fact the human species will inevitably move towards a pandrogynous way of seeing itself. And the reason is survival.
Why are you moving away from here?
Can't afford it.
Uh-huh.
Too expensive. Moving to a little housing co-op on the Lower East Side. It's just a one-bedroom apartment. Mm-hmm. Really small, 2 rooms.
Do you sometimes think that it's kind of unfair that there's so many really rich artists and you have to downsize?
And we're still struggling to pay the rent month to month? No. Be nice not to, gosh. Mm. We're 60 now, and we still have to struggle to pay the bills every month.
The moment they invite you for a lecture, they could buy a piece.
They could, couldn't they?
Something, or...
Maybe they will eventually. Who knows? Well, there's been a very cynical sort of overlay on the art world for quite some time. But that seems to be changing. Clever jokes and cynical art references just aren't enough. That's not going to look very impressive in 100 or 200 years' time, assuming there's anyone to look.